The assassination of Pavel Sheremet this week brought to light a kind of a feeling that things were returning back to the 1990s, when these kind of assassinations and criminal infighting and shootouts, car bombs took place. Less so in Kyiv than in Moscow, and in Odesa and the Crimea and Donetsk, but nevertheless, one wouldn't have expected this kind of criminal action in post-Euromaidan Ukraine. What I was surprised about is, on the one hand, we can certainly commend Ukrainian journalists for being very good at their investigations, very good at really digging down and finding new information, bringing to the surface lots of information about abuse of office at the senior levels and corruption and such like. They're very good at all of that. Certainly have matured a lot in the last 10, 15 years. But at the same time, there still seems to be a culture of being unwilling to call the authorities up on their inaction and deceptions and lying. And so whenever I see the authorities say they're going to, whether it's military prosecutor, general prosecutor, Yuri Lutsenko, President Poroshenko, whoever, whenever I see them say they're going to investigate it, I don't know whether I should laugh or cry, because they've been saying they're going to investigate crimes for the last nearly 2 decades, and we haven't seen any productivity from that, i.e. criminal cases brought to their conclusion with people being convicted. So to me, for them just to say they're going to investigate it, I have to remain highly skeptical. And I'm surprised, therefore, here that journalists don't call Ukrainian authorities up on this question and say, you're going to investigate this assassination of Sheremet? Well, can we trust you to do that? After all, you haven't finished investigating all these previous issues. I mean, the tragedy is that Sheremet was the common law husband of Olena Prytula, the founder, together with Georgiy Γκონγκάδзе of Ukrayinska Pravda, Ukrainian Truth. And the investigation of the Ґонґадзе murder 16 years ago has still not been concluded. So if that hasn't been concluded after 16 years, i.e. there's been no completion of the Γκонγκάδзе investigation to exactly who gave the orders to have Γκонγκάδзе kidnapped and murdered, why should we be any more optimistic that an investigation into the current murder of her partner, Sheremet, is going to be any better? I mean, are we going to be in 16 years' time wondering, what's happened to the investigation of Sheremet? So, to me, we should be highly skeptical and highly questioning of the Ukrainian authorities on issues of criminal investigations. And the reasons that we are highly skeptical is because fundamentally the same people are in power. I mean, let's put it bluntly, Petro Poroshenko is a Kuchmaite. I mean, his formative years in politics and business were under President Leonid Kuchma. In 2000, 2001, when the Γκонγκάδзе affair, described as the Kuchmagate crisis, came out into the open, there was Alexander Moroz, the socialist leader, and Yulia Tymoshenko on one side calling for Kuchma's impeachment. On the other side, who were defending Kuchma, were Poroshenko and then Prime Minister Viktor Yuschenko. Fast forward to 2005, when Yushchenko's president and Poroshenko's the secretary of the National Security and Defense Council. Yushchenko made lots of claims, lots of promises that he's going to, as it were, close and complete and close all of these criminal cases that had not been closed under Kuchma. He made a promise in his first month in office to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe that is his honor to complete the investigation of the Γκონγκάδзе murder. Well, neither Poroshenko, as the Secretary of the National Security Council, or President Yuschenko did anything about those issues. Those issues are still not resolved. The Γκонγκάδзе affair is still to this day not closed. There is no closure. So Myroslava Gongadze, who works in Washington for the last decade, she has not had closure on the murder of her husband, who was Olena Prytula's lover at the time. And there's been no closure on the poisoning of Viktor Yuschenko. I mean, we still to this day don't know what happened, really. We still don't know. There's been nobody's been brought to justice about that poisoning. So the same people are in power. The same people are sort of playing musical chairs. The same people have those mentalities from the past, where I don't have any faith, any trust in them completing investigations, particularly because, if Poroshenko had a different track record after he came to power in 2014, then I would probably be less skeptical today about the potential investigation of the murder of Sheremet. But what's he done since 2014? He hasn't fulfilled his election promise of living in a different way. He's actually continued the old ways. He's appointed 3 cronies as general prosecutors. The last one, they had to change the law so that a person without legal training could be appointed general prosecutor, Yuri Lutsenko. I just can't imagine the attorney of the US or the head of the Crown Prosecution Service in Canada or Britain having no legal training. It would be ludicrous. So he's clung to the General Prosecutor's Office in the same way as previous presidents, as a kind of insurance and defense mechanism to protect elites, to do deals, backroom deals with elites, in return for which they get immunity and he gets various benefits, shall we say. So there's that. Secondly, there's been nobody prosecuted. So why should we expect an investigation to be undertaken in honesty and sincerity into the murder of Sheremet when not a single person from the Yanukovych kleptocratic mafia and from the Berkut police snipers who murdered 100 Ukrainian protesters in the Euromaidan, none of those have been brought to justice, not a single one. And then we have all these shenanigans about who is or who is not on the Interpol watch list of Ukrainians wanted by Interpol in Ukraine. Some are taken off because they bribed somebody, this, that, and the other. They've done deals. So, I would have faith in President Poroshenko to undertake to basically take the investigation under his wing and ensure that Yuri Lutsenko completed it and did it professionally. But he has no track record of that. Over the last 16 years, whether under Kuchma, under Yushchenko, and now himself as president, he's done nothing to convince me that he's committed to the rule of law and committed to putting criminals, murderers, terrorists, assassins behind bars. He hasn't put, as I say, the snipers from the Euromaidan behind bars, so why should we assume he's going to put the people who are behind the murder of Sheremet behind bars? And they are probably, I don't think this is a Russian link. I think, it's ironic that the two groups of thought in Ukraine have been, firstly, journalists have tended to point the finger at corrupt and criminal elements straight away, which I think is probably correct. Whereas the authorities immediately, like on all occasions, throw that point the finger at Russia, because that's the default option, as it were, for them. It makes it easier for them not to have an investigation when they point the finger at Russia, because they can say, we can't get at them. They've run back to Russia. I think actually this is more to do with criminal activity. Ukrayinska Pravda is a very influential publication. It reveals a lot of the shenanigans and dirty deals and corruption and other abuses of office that take place at the highest levels of Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian authorities. And they obviously trod on too many toes. And so there was a response from those who don't like what they are reading there or what investigations are taking place there. And again, the person who's accountable for permitting this pervasive atmosphere to exist, for, as it were, permitting crooks, oligarchs and such like to feel as though nothing really has changed, is President Poroshenko. He has not really put the law down since in 2014 when it should have been done, but to this day, to say things have changed, it's no longer business as usual. And therefore, these elements from the past, these crooked elements, don't think that anything has changed, and therefore that they can get away with it still. And so, hence, there is this permissible atmosphere, and that has led to this tragic assassination. It probably was aimed maybe at Olena Prytula, because it was her car, but, unfortunately, Pavel Sheremet was driving it that day, and he was the one that was assassinated. If this was a Russian operation, there would be other things taking place. It would be one of a series of actions by the Russians. It wouldn't be just a one-off thing. And another reason why it seems to be more criminal than, say, Russian is during the same week as this happened, there was a knife attack on the Forbes correspondent in Kyiv, and a knife attack on the head of Transparency International in Kyiv. And Transparency International is, of course, the corruption watchdog, which doesn't give Ukraine very good rankings. It places Ukraine fourth from the bottom out of 15 Soviet republics in terms of its levels of corruption. So all of the 5 countries from the former USSR who are members of Putin's Eurasian Economic Union, Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Armenia, and Kyrgyzstan, all have better rankings, have lower levels of corruption than Ukraine, which allegedly wants to join Europe. Now go figure that one out. So I think it's more to do in that field. Hopefully there won't be more of these assassinations, but it certainly was a shock to all of my journalistic friends. And, when you actually ask them in private, do you really think there's going to be a thorough professional investigation? They, of course, say no. They hope, but they don't have any faith and trust in the General Prosecutor's Office, which, as I wrote in my blog, has de facto become an organized criminal outfit. I mean, it's a body that has not produced any results really in the last 20 years of its existence in independent Ukraine. And therefore, in my view, it should be closed down and something should be created from scratch, new for Ukraine. Thank you.